afternoon, students. Today we are going to read a poem, The Photograph by Shirley Toulson. This poem recollects the poet's personal memories of her mother's childhood, and she's looking back at these memories many years later when her mother is no more with her, and she remembers the time. A photograph is actually just a cardboard that we have which has a certain photograph on it. But how meaningful that photograph to us is the main thing. If you see many people's houses have lot of photographs on them, and photographs are hanging on the wall, or photographs are put on the mantelpiece, could be anywhere. And these photographs are there to remind of something pleasant, a particular memory which is very dear to us. So here the poet recollects this memory, and I read now from the poem. The cardboard shows me how it was when the two girl cousins went paddling, each one holding one of my mother's hands, and she, the big girl, some 12 years or so. All three stood still to smile through their hair at the uncle with the camera. A sweet face, my mother, that was before I was born, and the sea, which appears to have changed, washed with terribly transient feet. Now, this first stanza describes the photograph of the mother of the poet as a young girl, perhaps 12 years, and standing with her two girl cousins who had gone for a sea holiday or perhaps to spend a day at the beach. And there they're all standing to pose for a photograph, and the sea is washing their feet. If you see in this photograph, this is the closest reference I could get. They're all standing in the sea, and it says the mother, of course, over a period of time has undergone many changes in her life. However, the sea, that is nature, nature has not changed. Nature remains the same, but the feet are terribly transient. Transient means something temporary. So human life is temporary as compared to nature. Nature outlives everyone. Nature survives through a lot of things and survives. So maybe where our grandparents have been, we will also be there to those same places. But at the same time, maybe our grandparents are no longer with us, or some loved one is no longer with us. But yet we are still here on nature, which has survived all these various storms. So he says that these three children stood still to smile for the camera, and the sea breeze was blowing through their hair. And she says her mother's had a sweet face before I was born. I, that is the poet. And each of them are holding each other's hand and standing and posing for this photograph. Now, this photograph is one memory that the poet has. When the mother of the poet looks at her photograph, what is her reaction? Some 20, 30 years later, she'd laugh at the snapshot. See Betty and Dolly, she'd say. And look how they dressed us for the beach. The sea holiday was her past, and mine is her laughter. Both wry with the labored ease of loss. What does she say? The poet remembers that after the photograph of these three children was taken 30 years later, the lady who was a child in that photograph looks at her photograph, has a fond memory, and laughs at it and says, "Oh, look how we were looking when we had taken a trip to the beach." And so the sea holiday was the past of this woman, but for the poet, it is this laughter of her mother. It is this smile of her mother, which is the poet's past. And time has passed for both these situations, and the time at which the poet is writing this poem or is remembering is no longer with her. She passed on. and now she's been dead as nearly as many years as that girl lived. So now the poet comes back to that photograph of these children, and she says, this young girl who was in this photograph has been dead nearly as many years as she had lived. Circumstance, there is nothing to say at all. That means now she says of this situation, the loss and the sense of grief for the poet is so much that she has nothing to say. She cannot express her pain anymore. It is just silence for her. She is not able to recover from this, and she says it is silence and silences. That means she is not able to overcome this loss. This is something that will stay with her for a long time to come. Now let us look at some of the imagery that is there in this poem. The poet says, the cardboard shows me how it was. The cardboard. The cardboard is actually the photograph frame, and it shows there a 12-year-old the memory that comes back. And now we see a sweet face. My mother was the sea which appears to have changed less, washed their terribly transient feet. Terribly transient feet. Now the sound of sea, the sound of ocean. This alliteration is there to guide her and to tell us how emphasis is being laid on the transient period of life, that we are here for a short time and we live this life on earth, and then we all pass on one day. That means everyone will pass away. There will be no longer life in the concerned person. However, wants to see. Now again, this is the first phase where she remembers. Then she remembers her mother's laughter, where her mother is laughing at her photograph. And here she says, labored ease of loss. Now the word labored here and ease are used together. Actually, labored would mean putting a lot of effort, but it's ease. Why is ease being linked with labor? I think one of the reasons why this is being done is because we know that it is very difficult for a person to forget their parent or loved one. But as period of time passes, as a phase goes on, one slowly accepts this, accepts the loss, accepts the tragedy of having lost a loved one. So actually this would be opposing words, labored ease of loss, labored and ease. So actually this would be seen as an oxymoron. That is another figure of speech, where two contradictory ideas are clubbed together. So this is the way. And terribly transient piece, of course, I've mentioned is alliteration. And here, if we look at it, there's another repetition of alliteration. See this. All three stood still to smile. So, stood still to smile. This is also alliteration here. Now, what does it say to us in the following? Now she's been dead nearly as many years as that girl lived. And of this circumstance, what circumstance is being referred to? The circumstance that is being referred to is the death of the poet's mother. And why does she say it's silence and silences, again alliteration, because she is so grief stricken and so emotional that she has no words to express it. So the loss of her mother puts her at a loss of words to express her grief. Here she is so much overwhelmed with the loss of her mother passing on that she is not able to overcome that, and she is just silent about it because it becomes so emotional for her. She cannot express her thoughts, she cannot express her feelings over here. So here she is silent. So if you see this poem, the writer in very few words expresses a very strong emotion, the emotion of the sense of loss, and how mortality of man is overcome by the immortality of nature, where the sea in which they had gone for the sea holiday is still the same. But now her mother, who had gone so many years ago, is no more with her to perhaps share or spend time with her. And that is what the poet wants to express to us through these lines. Students, I would recommend that you read this poem and at the same time understand the emotions behind it. Look at the imagery used in the poem, look at the words that are used in the poem, and then you will be able to better understand. Read the poem. I will be posting the links to you on the group. Thank you so much and have a good day.